All right, hey guys. All right, so we're getting back to civil liberties. We talked about the difference between civil liberties and civil rights 2 weeks ago. I'm gonna go ahead and enter present mode. And now we're going to look at civil liberties in particular. So, just a quick recap: civil liberties come from the Bill of Rights. They are particularly those that come from the First Amendment, is what we focused on. Whereas civil rights all come from the 14th Amendment, passed after the Civil War, which guarantees your birthright citizenship and equality for all citizens under the law. No one can be treated differently under the law. Everyone is entitled to due process, the whole process of going through the court system. All right. So this week, we'll be talking about how important are your rights of assembly and petition, and your rights to protest. How free are you in the United States of America? What can the government do to ensure national security? And what is your right to privacy in this modern world? A lot of these answers are going to vary for each of you and are going to be very personal. So I hope you're paying attention. These are some pretty serious things going on in your life. Like whether or not you know it or not, these things are affecting you. So the Constitution guarantees the right to assembly and the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. You get to protest and let them know when you're unhappy what's going on. You get to bring things to the public attention and to the attention of public officials. Protest. So the big question is going to be, what is the balance between freedom and the freedoms given to you in the Constitution and security? Security of others, the security of their well-being, the security of the nation, national security, law and order versus liberty and freedom. If this sounds current, if this sounds like Black Lives Matter, if this sounds like what you see going on in the world, it's because it is. This is a conversation we've been having for a very long time, and we're going to look into the legalities behind it and a lot of what these arguments are based on both sides. So hold on tight and let's go. So I told you had a right to protest and assemble and make your grievances known. Well, the first thing after that I want to tell you about is that the government can control what we call time, place, manner regulations. That's the way they do it. They can control where you can do these things, the manner of how these things are supposed to be taken and go about, in the times that you can do it. They cannot control what it is you're wanting to say or what the assembly is about, but they can make laws about everything else about it. That is firmly based in Supreme Court cases. This one was one of the biggest one. It happened in the 70s, and it said that you can't protest outside of a school, essentially, while school is in session because it distracts from the school. So the city can make requirements that says, hey, you cannot protest here. Even though you have a right to assembly, you don't have a right to do it at these times at this place. Freedom and security. Children and students should have the security to learn without being distracted by a protest. Your freedom to protest near your school goes down. Governments can regulate the time, place, and manner of assemblies. Yeah, you're going to hear that a lot. I'm going to say it over again. Their rules have to be content neutral. So they're fine to protest like this, but they can't necessarily disrupt life too much. So this cartoon, man, it hurts a little bit because it's very true. You can protest anything you want, but the government can just kind of keep squeezing you into one little spot. A free speech area. It has times. Ooh, let that one sink in. Let's pause. I hope you have questions about this, and I hope you have concerns about this. Maybe you are thinking that, yeah, the government has a right to do this. Not everyone wants to hear whatever everyone's going on yelling about. People want to go about their lives. Or maybe you're thinking, whoa, if they can control it this much, do you really have a right to do this? do we really have a right to make our grievances known, or do we just have a right to go yell about it when we feel like it and go yell about it zone where no one can hear us? That's up to you to decide. That's up to you to decide when you vote, or whether or not you go to protest, or whether you follow the rules. But there are consequences if you don't. I do feel the need to tell you that. Again, you see rules outlined by the Supreme Court, and I'm sorry that this hides it. I don't know how to make it go away. All right, and so there are different rules about private property. You can assemble, but you can't trespass. You can't be on someone else's property. Trespassing is a crime. However, if you're a place like Walmart or a shopping mall or any other kind of big business, maybe you're like Coca-Cola and people are angry about your monopoly. They're not really a monopoly yet. Certain states can, big, bold, underline can, not required to, make laws that require companies to let people protest and assemble on their property. And that varies from state to state. Other states can make laws that say you don't have to let people protest on your property, even if like you're doing awful things. Doesn't matter. Can't do it. Private property. And that varies from state to state. And what is the balance between people's right to make their grievances known and be like, hey, this is bad and people should know about it, versus this is my land and I don't want to have people on it protesting. Another important right to think about in a very similar aspect or similar world is this freedom of association. You have the right to be with people who want to promote similar ideas as you, who think the same as you. This is your right of association to join a group. You can join any group like this, and these groups are protected. They're allowed to exist as long as they're not violating any known laws. They don't have to let anyone in. They can make their own rules. The government can't make rules that say you have to let these people in. You can't discriminate against them. And that makes a lot of people unhappy. I remember when I was in the Boy Scouts, it was a huge deal when they made the decision that you can be openly gay and be in Scouts. Because for years, if you were openly gay, you weren't allowed to be in. And the Supreme Court said, yes, they can do that. The Constitution says they're allowed to have these groups, and they're not required to let anyone in. They can choose their own membership requirements. So the Boy Scouts had to change that on their own, not because of any lawsuit. Just a personal example. A historical example, the NAACP during the Civil Rights era. The federal government wanted to know who all was a member because they didn't like all the things that they were saying. They were very openly socialist, and they were calling out the government, and they were trying to make some serious changes, and the government didn't like what they were having to say, and they wanted to know who all was a member. And the Supreme Court said no. They have a right to be members secretly. That is their own privacy. More on that in a second. However, flip side of the coin, like a group like the KKK has the same protections. They don't have to tell who their members are, and they're allowed to be a group. They are not, I repeat, they are not allowed to break the law through acts of hate. That's an important side note. But they are equally protected to be a group that exists just as much as the NAACP. So I mentioned that right to privacy, that you have it. What is it? Privacy is like this. You can't touch it, but it is this right to be left alone, to be anonymous, to be in control of what information about you other people have access to. The United Nations recognizes this as a human right, and the Supreme Court recognizes this as being an integral part of our Constitution. That means it is absolutely intended to be in our Constitution. It's not like explicitly said, which is the controversy, but it's there. And I'm going to skip past this slide. I'm going to come right back to it, because it's laid out in the Constitution. The First Amendment, you have the right to speech and assembly. You have this, you don't have to have soldiers in your home. Your home can't be searched without a warrant. So you're allowed to be private in your own home. You have the Fifth Amendment about sharing any incriminating information. You have a right to your own personal information. And there are different types of privacy. You have your religious privacy. It's no one's business what religion you belong to. If you want to tell people, fine. What you do on the internet, your medical history, your location, where have you been, where are you going, travel, where are you traveling to, like what are your children doing, what kind of money do you make, how much money do you have in the bank, do you own a gun, how many guns do you own? These are all things that are considered to be in your realm of privacy. You have the legal right to control this information. In theory. I'm sure you're all looking at this going, well, except and you all have questions about something of this. All these things you're looking at them and going, well, what about? Yeah, exactly. It's complicated. And that's the nature of this, because it's not explicitly laid out. And there is that issue of freedom, and your freedom of privacy and your right to privacy and security. And these things are going to be at odds a lot. So as we get to that, I just want to point out that I won't talk about any of these court cases. These are just all different times when your rights to privacy were talked about and came up in the Supreme Court. Again, the court deciding your rights. It's what they do. And a lot of those rights are disappearing. I don't know if I'm sure you all realize this. I don't know what I'm talking about. You all know this. As technology increases and social media presence increases, and your phone tracks what you do, and your computer tracks what you do, and that information is sold and redistributed and sold and sold and sold, your privacy is eroded. And most of us don't care about most of those things. We care about the more personal things. We don't care that Google knows how long we looked at a picture. The question becomes, do you have that right? Or do you give that right away? And you have the right to who they sell it to and what they do with it. And how much information can they really get on you? Like, what are they really getting? What is the government getting? So you have the Fourth and Fifth Amendments, but the police also have a right to do their jobs. So they can do things like search you if they have reasonable suspicion. If they believe that something's bad's going on, they can do things for public health, and they can inspect your homes and like evict you from your home if it's a health hazard. Maybe they can give you tickets for not wearing a mask during a pandemic, or force you to quarantine. And maybe they can track your location on your phone to see if you've come into contact with people. And how much rights do you have to say, yes, you can or can't track me during this pandemic? Freedom versus security. I'll say it again. I'm going to go on past this. So, before you all were born, 9/11 happened. And I was a really little kid when it happened. You all have lived your whole lives post 9/11. Just a month after 9/11, we passed what was called the USA Patriot Act. And this was done to combat terrorism. We were terrified of it happening again. We believed that another attack was coming. And it was intended to make it easier for law enforcement to do their job. It increased cooperation between the CIA, the FBI, and every other government law enforcement agency. And there is a lot of them. If you watch crime TV shows, you know what I'm talking about. Well, it gave the government a lot of power. Like, they can track you at any point in time. They record your phone calls. They record all your private phone information. They can tap your phones at random. They can do these things secretly so you don't know you're being searched. They're allowed to, if they suspect you to be a terrorist or to be involved with any kind of terrorist activity, they can do what's called like a sneak peek. And they can go into your house or your car and search it without ever telling you, ever. Just go and look and see what they find. Anyone who is deemed to be a terrorist can be detained indefinitely without trial. What? What? If that feels problematic to you, there's a reason for that. This law was passed in a hurry. I'm not going to try and describe it too much, but no one read through it, and a lot of things happened in it that are questionably unconstitutional. It was done to protect us from attack, to save lives. Was this justified? Or is this a violation of our rights? Do we have a right to be safe? Does the government have the obligation to uphold national security, to prevent terrorist attacks? I mean, what is it here? On this next slide, okay, it didn't play. Good. It is like a 5-minute video on the Patriot Act. It's done by the History Channel when the History Channel was still doing history and not aliens. Please watch it. We'll be talking about it probably next week, or at least things that relate back to it. You're going to want to know about this. You're going to realize, probably raise more questions, and you're going to start wanting to learn more about it on your own, I hope. But give it a watch. It should be fun. Be prepared next week. If you're virtual, be prepared to share your thoughts on Canvas. If you're in person, be prepared to talk about it in person. Thanks, guys. Enjoy your week.